Hey guys, it's Lucas here. So I'm going to be observing some of the different armor sets in Dark Souls 3, and comparing them to some other pieces found in real life and history. I won't be scrutinizing the armor that is obviously not trying to be realistic. I'm gonna go for the stuff that they probably based off real life armor, and that they actually put effort into making it realistic. So we're gonna start from what appears to be the oldest armor first, and what is also one of the worst examples. Now, this is the Northern armor, and it's pretty clear that it's trying to have that kind of Viking look, but it really just doesn't capture that, what they actually wore. Now, they did wear mail in real life, and that part of it doesn't look so bad, but all the extra belts and fur and the tattered cape and the bronze shoulder piece really just don't line up with what Vikings actually wore. That's a later Norman Viking, and you see these are some of the Viking raiders. This is here is a reenactment, and the worst part of this set is definitely the helmet. It does not look anything like a real Viking helmet. It looks more like a Corinthian helm, which was an ancient Greek helm, and obviously that doesn't make too much sense on Northern armor. Next here we've got Crichton's chain armor, aka the Mirror Chain set, as it's called in Dark Souls 3. Now this is what I consider to be the most historically accurate armor in the series. It's very, very, very similar to armor that they wore in the late Dark Age during the Crusades. Now you probably can see that by the lower chest piece, but you probably don't recognize the helmet at first glance, but it was a helmet used during the Crusades. It's called a Norman Spangen helm, or Crusader Spangen helm. It's based off the Norman helm with an extra faceplate added. There you go. There's one of the examples worn by a reenactor. Yeah, they did a really good job with this armor. I'm not even sure whether they knew how good of a helmet choice that was for this set, and here's a replica that you can buy. And yeah, this is one of my favorite armor sets in the series. It's cool that it's so realistic. With the Crusader theme, here we have Solaire's armor. Honestly, I don't think this one is as accurate as Crichton's, and I'll tell you why. Now, this is mail, but it has all this extra bulk near the arms and chest, and that is just mail, and then reasonably thin padded gambeson underneath that. What is causing all the extra bulk? And then the helmet doesn't really remind me of the real great helms. It has a lot of extra mass near the neck. Is far too small, and then the Cathedral Knight helm, going off that, it looks a little bit more realistic, but it still has a ton of extra mass near the neck and back. And remember, great helms are very heavy. They're probably some of the heaviest helmets that they had used. Like, these ones are like 9 to 10 pounds, and then with a padded coif and a mail coif, that's even more weight on your head. You don't need any extra mass. Hopefully in the DLC, we'll be seeing some new great helms. Hopefully a Sugarloaf helm like this one, because I don't think the ones we had in the base game were really up to par. Next we've got the chain armor, but it should be called the mail armor. This one is pretty accurate. The length of the hauberk, the way the leggings are shaped, except for I don't know if they would really have cotton on the back. I'm pretty sure it would just be mail all the way around. The only problem is, well, there's about two. The way that the part under the chin is formed is not quite right, and the size of the rings. Now, generally, in real life, you want really small rings to make a really fine and protective shape, but these rings are huge. That wouldn't give you nearly as much protection as ones with small rings. And another thing, we can't really be sure whether there was warriors who only wore mail, because when mail, specifically chainmail, was invented, helmets had already been around, like, since the beginning of warfare. A really, really long time. So, is there any really valid reason that someone would only wear mail like this? A helmet isn't particularly expensive as well. There might be situations, and here's an example from the Morgan Bible. Next, as we move into 15th century style armor, we have what I consider a bit of a mutt. Now, the chest plate and the gauntlets and the leggings all look very 14th century. But then the helmet, once again the helmet, is completely out of place. Now the helmet is an armet which was invented, like, I believe in the late 15th century, 1490. And so you really wouldn't see this sort of armor on the chest while wearing an armet. Maybe right when the armet was invented, there may have been some people who didn't wear breastplates and just wore mail with cloth over it. Here's some examples that kind of remind me of Elite Knight armor, but of course not with the armet. And then this helmet here is a historical armet. Pretty interesting helmet. Now we're fully in the 15th century style armor, and we've got the Lothric Knight armor, which is one of my favorites. It looks really nice, lines up very well with the 15th century style armor, except the cape, although it's not impossible to have a cape. I'm sure you could have one if you wanted one. There definitely isn't really any upside to a cape, but you can have one. Then we've also got the normal knight armor, which also looks a lot like 15th century style, pretty accurate to that, except much more lowly, and also the right arm isn't covered. This series kind of has a thing for making their armor asymmetrical, which, like, there isn't really much of a point to. Most of the 15th century armor was very, very symmetrical. And you always had both pauldrons. You almost always had both pauldrons. There isn't really a reason, unless you wanted your sword arm to be really, really flexible. And here's a replica that you can buy, although for a very high price. Next, we've got the Sunset armor, which looks pretty 15th century. I like this one because of how the breastplate is spaced and shaped. It's very accurate. Now, of course, it's gold, and you could do brass plated like coating, and that doesn't really add too much extra weight. You definitely wouldn't want brass armor because that's not a very good material. It's very bendy or brittle depending on how you temper it. But I didn't really want to show this armor for the lower parts. I really wanted to show you the helmet, which is hideous. Now, I don't really know why it's set up like this with the cloth and it being tilted like that. It does sort of, it is similar to some Renaissance helmets, but the way that it is tilted like that, if someone did an overhead strike to you, you'd be knocked off your feet. You'd be knocked off your feet, you'd tip you over. Now we've got the Wing Knight armor, which is not historically accurate by any means, but there's one part that will probably surprise you. The wings on the back. Now I'm just going to zoom up here. Now, you probably wouldn't think there would be any sort of wings on armor, like what's the point? But there was some knights in Renaissance Poland who actually had full-sized wings, even larger than the one here in Dark Souls 3. They were normally horse riders, although they did have sabers, so that infers that they probably fought off horse. But with these giant wings, I don't really know how they do that effectively.